Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Wells of Wall Street. AllianceBlock video here, ALBT on the exchange. Before we go into this one, do check out the other channel videos and make sure you smash that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. So loads of different topics, assets, discussions, everything you could possibly need. Let us know if there's any assets in here that we don't cover and you want us to. That is not a problem either, even if I don't hold them myself. Absolutely here for you guys as well for any analysis or any top-notch overviews of projects as and when we can. So guys, let's go straight into this one. So for now, I just wanted to touch on this. So everyone hopefully is aware now that the Davos event is taking place as we speak and as we do these videos, basically organised via the World Economic Forum. Casper Labs, we covered the other day, who are a sponsor and host, if you like, of the blockchain hub at Davos. And of course, Rachid, hopefully I've got one of those pronunciations correct. Apologies if not. But the founder and CEO of AllianceBlock was speaking today at the Davos event itself, at this blockchain hub in particular. And I've gone through this presentation. It's absolutely fantastic. I think some of the stuff that we know from the intro video that we did, but I'm really intrigued to see the interaction more about the Nexera project that they've got, the identity aspect. And this in particular was greatly interesting to me. The Web3 passport that unlocks compliant DeFi. Now, this isn't just about talking about passports like we would use in airports and things like this, but actually as an identity, digital ID, DID, in the grand schemes of anything and everything that we do. And I was explaining to some people at work the other day about blockchain and this integration of digital identity and how this can be utilized in some very interesting ways, to the point where we remove paper, we remove the need for physical cards. Things can be done quicker because we as an identity are already processed and verified on blockchain, and via eventual things like biometrics as an example, these things can integrate very significantly well to one coordinated identification system. So it could be whether you're signing a contract or changing deeds of a house. It could be simply a job application, a CV, whatever it might be, can be imprinted on essentially an advancement of a QR code, right? So that's where the Nexera project is looking into, amongst other things as well, of course. But here's a great example: compliant access, all the different things that you could explore and integrate into these kind of things, creating bank accounts, you name it. Like there's just an endless list really of application to this. Now, this isn't the only thing that AllianceBlock do, but they're really signifying their prowess into this kind of element and area of blockchain technology and the development of that moving forward. I think it's very interesting as another layer on top of the amazing layers that we've already got, scalability, etc. This is now taking it to a really defined area. And certainly something, in my opinion, this market in general about identity is huge, absolutely humongous. And this can really appeal to multiple sectors, including things like healthcare, of course. As we mentioned many times before, the implications of blockchain in healthcare, it could be simply things like the kind of medication that you need, or when we do have the RFID chips within us, to have essentially information and data about our own health and even future health based on our nutrition that we're putting in and the connection to our biosphere, determining what we need to purchase nutrition-wise or have medication delivered to us. All of these things, guys, can be integrated. This is really fascinating, strange at the same time, but really interesting to open the mind up to all of this kind of stuff. One thing that you're going to see a lot more about from AllianceBlock is Meta NFT. Now, this is something that is talked about quite a lot through AllianceBlock, and certainly something that they're really engaging with more and more in the background. And I think it's very important that we cover this as a topic over the next few videos to really discuss this, because we're not just talking about like pieces of art here, guys. We're talking about anything and everything, as I've said multiple times in multiple videos. An NFT is something that's not a ratio 1-to-1. It can be applied to physical and digital products and services. It could be a car, it could be a house, anything and everything, guys, right? So when you really incorporate this with identity, with your DeFi wallet, then having all your possessions and assets potentially digitally formatted, and ownership and information all on this system as well. Wow, it gets super exciting and interesting, guys. Really does. And this wallet aspect is very intriguing as we're developing. Well, I say we, I'm not doing a thing, but the development, if you like, of the solutions of a DeFi wallet. We're not just talking about finance anymore, guys. We're talking about a massive, giant system incorporating and integrating a multitude of layers, information, and processes as well. So I'm really excited to see the further developments of Nexera project in particular via these guys, but AllianceBlock in general. We know that they have some great partnerships and integrations, and I think this is really one. I'm holding my hands up. We only did the intro video a few weeks back, based on some recommendations I had from some pals in our crypto groups that I have, but also some recommendations from people in the comments. And I'm really grateful for everyone. And I think that's the great thing about the community and driving this space together with you, is that everyone hopefully can learn something, whether it's through the channel or me finding things out and then producing hopefully some content that you enjoy and learn from about all of this, because it's come to my plate. I was fortunate enough to buy ALBT a few weeks back when I first discovered it, thanks to the community. And wow, obviously we've had a run up in the market, which we'll go into in a second, but do have a read of this. I'll leave a link of this in the description. It's nothing I've put together. It's simply what they ran through in the DAVOS agenda program on the panel today at the DAVOS event. So really, really interesting. Self-custody enables direct access to assets such as cryptocurrencies, NFTs, data, and more. Couldn't simplify it better than that. Having everything under one roof, quite significant, really, and great to see the continuation and building of that. Look at this: birthdays, nationality, PEP check, compliance check, all of this stuff, including all the other things that we've already got on Web 2, combining collectively. Very interesting indeed, guys. Wrapping up that topic there, really interesting. Let's jump into the chart for ALBT, currently floating around at 10 cents. Now, first of all, I want to initiate a reasoning behind looking at some of these lower buy points that are an option to us in the near future. Look at these high points that we saw back at $1.40 back here in 2021. There's loads of room for improvement and growth within this particular asset class. I've got here the price range increase that we saw over this last week, which is quite staggering, really. I think the video I released yesterday was around 250%, but yeah, I've just accurately moved this about slightly. It is around the 250% increase gain growth this week alone in ALBT. It was actually fantastic. So I was pleased to have purchased back at 4 cents, seeing the fluctuation upwards to the dizzy heights of around, I think the highest point actually on the 15th, 2 days ago, 15 cents on the nose. And that's really interesting, actually. I wanted to pinpoint this. I'll just get rid of the price range here, just to give you a bit more clarity about fib retracement tools and why traders use these kind of analytical tools and potential future proofing of both buying and selling methods. Now, that you can't always have 100% guarantees that this is going to be verified. However, it is a very fundamental tool to understand where the support lines and the resistance lines may be in the longevity of a project, both short term and long term. Now, there are loads of factors to play. We've got the world economic situation. We've got things like the Bitcoin movement last week, which has obviously enticed a lot of other assets to build further upwards because there's more focus on this. People start FOMOing in, but also a lot of people take profits from Bitcoin and then put them into the lower assets or the lower priced assets. There's always this traditional method over the last few years where you'd sell Bitcoin, put it into Ethereum, watch Ethereum rise, then drop it into the small altcoins or any other projects that you hold. That's sort of redefining itself over the last year or two, I have to say. But this is the pinnacle point I wanted to make. First things first, looking back at this touch point here on the 15 cent mark, okay? So not only does it play on a macro level, but also one of the longer term levels that I put in here as well. So I've taken basically the lowest points that we see on the chart and some of the significant areas that we've seen in the chart, and including the big main one here that takes us to the top line. Now, if I scroll out further, you're going to start seeing some really interesting targets for the future where we may want to put some sell orders. I'm not saying that's going to happen this year, but certainly some really interesting identifiable points where ALBT could and should arguably get to based on the data that we've got in its already short life cycle, albeit certainly prominent, and certainly a lot of data-driven information can be taken from this. So hopefully that makes a bit more sense. But pulling this back to a macro level in a shorter term, we see a few things here. First and foremost, this traction point back here in 18th of October 2022, last year, okay? This is a defining point to see a low point and a higher point before this week happened, okay? This is what the day was being driven on for me as buy areas, lower buying opportunities, or seeing where those support levels might be. Now, if we look at this medium term one, which basically takes this lower region and the other recent high point, so just get rid of this silly advert and that one, you see back here on April the 3rd, 2022 as well. So there's two markers, two fib retracement levels here, and one based on something more recent, okay? But what's clear as day here is very interesting. The matching up points here showcase some really interesting points where we might see some resistance. And hey presto, on this 15 cent one, very much touching this medium level one that we had, and one of the previous short-term ones that we had as well, identifying on a longer term scale. Now, at this point, we didn't really envision that ALBT was going to go up to 15 cents, right? However, we could potentially suggest that actually in the future, whether it's next week, in a month, 3 months, 6 months, there's an opportunity around this particular area that we could take some profits. This is why DCAing is very interesting and important in the structure of how you buy and sell or trade, whether you're accumulating, whatever it might be, because there are great opportunities to identify in these areas. Now, there were obviously signaled points above this, but what you've got to understand is the momentum of a chart and movement and how trades and orders are put in. So you get this current fluctuating wave upwards. Sometimes it's too rapid to the point where we can't have enough money coming in for it to really push the barriers, go even further to these next ones. I'm not saying that we could stabilize here and then push up again over the next 48 hours or into the next week. We don't know. But this is why it's really important to categorize some really interesting areas for buying and selling, okay? So hopefully that makes a bit more sense on that point. But again, we got some long-term targets here on the way up. But also, now with this newer data of which I've got from this fib retracement adjustment, in fact, I could actually potentially put it up to here. Now we've got that defined pinpoint up here. We can see that we are matching back here on the 18th of October with this line here, and currently where the price is sitting right now. And it's also hitting some areas that we rejected back in May. What I mean by this is it flopped downwards, it couldn't support it. We had a bit of support here, got up to that area, rejected again. We tried again back here in October, and since then it's been very steady straight line movements on the day chart here, right? So as you can see, we're now toying with this area that we've seen both back here in June last year and October. It's plain as day, easy to understand and see this visually. What we're going to see now is probably some sideways movements and testing this area. But I wouldn't say concern is maybe a strong word. My thought process around this is we're coming back down. Maybe we might have a spike up again, but we have to come down because we need to identify support areas and verify those support areas. Because if you look back here in May, we've had a big drop down. There's a huge black gap here between this point here in June and this point in October. It rejected again. So it means that we're not ready to have this current area of around 10 cents as a support line. We now have to identify and verify lower support areas, i.e., for example, 5 cents, again matched visually along this line here that I've just imaginary put here, but also matches up with the fib levels. Look at this, here and here. And it's exactly the same point at these higher point structures here and here, broken through every single one of them. Can you see this? So you've got the green line, which is representing the current price, and you've got this. It's pushed through 2 levels of fib levels here. And you can see the push up again to what we just drawn in, but more importantly, in between these macro and longer term lines as well. So we couldn't quite sustain that. It's dropped back down. Profits have been taken. People have realized that this area is not going any further. Profits have been taken. And then you get a bit of a fluctuating pattern of people making some second and third adjustments. And now people are just waiting around to see what happens over these next 24, 30 hours. The next point being about this is about accumulation, DCAing. Will it come down low? We don't know, but we have to take some positions at potentially at this area based on the fact that it was at 15, and if it does spike from 10 to 15, good profit options and margins, but also the opportunity that if it did spike up again, you're then going from a 10-cent area to a 25. The alternative on the way down is look at this in a positive aspect that we could get a small batch here and know that potentially we will hit these lower regions once again. Again, going back to my point about having to verify and confirm specific areas at these lower points, which is why we have these particular areas here. So for me personally, I will be accumulating a very, very small batch here. Why a small batch? Because the RSIs are huge right now. 80 on the 14-day and 74 on the 28-day. This is basically reminding us that we're at the higher regions of a mini bull cycle, if you like, of this last week. And if you put money in now, 80 is obviously very near 100, as is 74. And this means that there's a high risk that this won't have massive profit opportunity. So if we wait for these RSIs to come down to say, 40, 50, and then representing down to those 40 levels again, which you usually take from this point about a week or two now because of the way we've spiked up, we can start identifying the lower positions. Now, doing 10 and 8 is not really that interesting to me, but I would be certainly very interested back at these kind of levels again at 5 cents for sure, halving the price point of where it is now, but also matching up with some really interesting fluctuating moves that we've seen across the board for the last 4 to 5 months. Again, you could argue that you could do some placements along this way, but for me, to make a real dent in this and accumulate properly, I would probably be looking at just over those 5 cent marks. And then reassessing then. I'm not going to put any lower ones than that right now, but that's certainly one of the key areas. However, if you are looking on the way down, well, the simplistic thing to do would be to really identify areas along that way. So for example, 7.5 cents could be another alternative. I'm just showing you this because that's what I'm doing. This could be an opportunity for what you might want to do. Do your own research, do your own analysis, but certainly think about all these things I'm mentioning because I think it's very important to understand and not just jump into channels that go, oh, the price point's going to the price point of that without any substance or information or why that might have happened. It's really important to understand the environment and the world that we're in, understand the events that are going on, particularly with Davos, and people are very excited about, webinars and stuff like that, of course, but also there is a momentum and calculations of data that come from all the other things like Bitcoin that then transfer into this. So we have to be awake to the fact of the ups and the downs, but also the positions that we could take along the way, both up and down as well. That aside, I just want to reiterate the performance on the week. Now we've had a bit of stabilization, we can confirm roughly 90% on the week, 155% up year to date, which is phenomenal. There's not many projects that can boast all of these greens here. On the year, we're still a bit down, but very positive for ALBT. And it's certainly probably going to raise some eyebrows like it did with me a few weeks ago. And people are going to definitely be wanting to look at some of the lower positions. So hopefully this has been a bit helpful. We'll cover ALBT again in a few days' time, especially after the Davos event has fully finished. We can really review everything that went on. I'm going to try and do a live video. I tried to do the other day, but our power went out for some weird reason. But I'm trying to do a live show either today or over the next couple of days just to review Davos overall, because some really big points coming out of this about blockchain, cryptocurrency moving forward. So leave this with me, guys. Thanks for watching this one, and we'll see you in the next ALBT video as soon as possible. Take care. Bye-bye.